The boutique fell silent. Laura, the impeccably dressed manager of the high-end store, stood at the entrance, her face a mask of disdain. "I'm sorry, but you cannot shop here," she declared firmly, gesturing toward the door. The woman she addressed was none other than Melania Trump, the First Lady of the United States. A hush fell over the room as gasps rippled through the few customers browsing the racks of designer dresses. Cameras from outside the boutique flashed, their light spilling into the store like an unwelcome spotlight on the unfolding drama. Melania, poised and graceful, glanced around, her expression unreadable. She seemed to hesitate for a moment before stepping toward the exit. The atmosphere was thick with tension as whispers swirled, shoppers struggling to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Laura, unfazed, smoothed her skirt and returned to her duties, certain she had upheld the store's standards. But when Melania returned a few days later, the doors once again swinging wide, this time flanked by cameras and an entourage, the shock and confusion etched on Laura's face told a story no one in the boutique would forget. It had all started on an ordinary morning at Elegance, a boutique in the heart of Manhattan, known for its exclusivity and charm. Laura had managed the store for years, building its reputation as a haven for the wealthy and fashionable. From her perch behind the counter, she prided herself on spotting who belonged and who didn't. In Laura's eyes, Elegance wasn't just a store, it was a lifestyle, and only a select few deserved to be part of it. The day Melania Trump first walked through the boutique's gleaming glass doors, Laura's sharp eyes noticed her immediately. Dressed in simple yet elegant clothing, Melania had an unassuming air, though her beauty and grace turned heads. Laura, who didn't immediately recognize her, assumed she was another tourist hoping to browse without any intention of buying. Melania approached the racks, her fingers brushing delicately against the fine fabrics. "Excuse me," she said softly, her accent faint but unmistakable. "Could you tell me about this dress?" Laura pursed her lips. "That's a custom piece," she replied coolly. "Very exclusive." Melania smiled warmly. "It's beautiful. Could I try it on?" Laura hesitated. The dress in question was one of the boutique's most expensive items. She glanced at Melania's understated outfit and frowned. "We usually reserve those for our VIP customers," she said. "Perhaps you'd like to look at something from the ready-to-wear section." Melania's expression faltered for just a moment before she nodded politely. "Of course," she said. She continued browsing, selecting a few items and taking them to the fitting room. Laura remained skeptical, but decided to humor her. After some time, Melania emerged, holding the dresses she had tried. "I'll take these," she said, offering a credit card. Laura barely glanced at the card as she rang up the purchase, still unconvinced that this quiet woman was the kind of customer Elegance sought to attract. When Melania left, Laura dismissed the encounter as unremarkable. It wasn't until later that Laura realized the significance of her customer. A colleague, wide-eyed with disbelief, showed her a photo online. "Laura," she said, pointing at the screen, "that woman you helped today." That was Melania Trump. Laura's heart skipped a beat. "Are you sure?" "Positive," the colleague replied. "She's the First Lady of the United States. How did you not recognize her?" Laura shrugged off the mistake, relieved that nothing had gone wrong during Melania's visit. But her relief would be short-lived. A few days later, Melania returned. This time, she wore a simpler outfit and carried no entourage. Laura, still clinging to her assumptions, misjudged her intentions. As Melania walked toward the racks, Laura stepped forward, blocking her path. "Ma'am, I'm afraid we have a policy regarding who can shop here," she said firmly. "I think you'd be more comfortable at another store." Melania blinked, clearly caught off guard. "I don't understand," she said. "Is there a problem?" "No problem," Laura replied curtly. "But this store caters to a specific clientele." Melania's posture stiffened. "I see," she said quietly. Without another word, she turned and left, the door swinging shut behind her. The few customers in the boutique exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared to speak up. Laura felt a pang of guilt, but quickly brushed it aside. She was certain she had done the right thing to preserve the boutique's exclusivity. Yet something about the encounter gnawed at her. She couldn't shake the image of Melania's composed yet wounded expression as she walked away. The days that followed were uneventful, and Laura soon convinced herself that she had nothing to worry about. But when Melania returned, this time with a swarm of cameras and an entourage that included a prominent journalist, the air in the boutique grew heavy with anticipation. As the doors opened and Melania stepped inside, Laura's face turned pale. This wasn't just a shopping trip. It was something much bigger, and Laura had no idea what was about to unfold. The boutique was frozen in place. Shoppers who had been quietly admiring the racks of designer clothes now clung to the edges of displays, their eyes wide with curiosity and disbelief. Laura stood rooted behind the counter, her carefully rehearsed composure slipping away with every step Melania took toward her. The cameras clicking behind the First Lady only added to the tensy. On, their relentless flashes turning the luxurious boutique into a stage. Melania stopped a few feet away, her face calm, but her eyes piercing. "Good afternoon, Laura," she said, her voice even but unmistakably commanding. The sound of her name spoken by someone of such stature made Laura flinch. She straightened her posture, clutching the edge of the counter for support. "Good afternoon," Laura managed, her voice thin. She tried to maintain her usual air of professionalism, but the beads of sweat forming on her forehead betrayed her nerves. "I wanted to return," Melania said, her tone laced with something Laura couldn't quite place. Was it disappointment? "The other day, you made it clear that I wasn't welcome here. I wanted to give you the opportunity to explain why." The weight of Melania's words hung in the air. The boutique staff stopped pretending to organize shelves and watched silently. Customers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to stay or slip out unnoticed. Laura cleared her throat, scrambling for the confidence that had once defined her. As I mentioned before, we cater to a very specific clientele. It's about maintaining a certain standard." Melania raised an eyebrow. "And what standard do you believe I failed to meet?" Her question was delivered softly, but carried an unmistakable edge. Laura faltered, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to come up with a response. Every word she considered seemed either insufficient or outright insulting. "It wasn't personal," she finally stammered. "I just assumed." "Assumed what?" Melania interrupted, her voice sharper now. "That I didn't belong because I wasn't dressed a certain way. Because I didn't flaunt my status." She gestured toward the cameras behind her. "It seems your assumptions have brought us here." The room was so silent that Laura could hear the faint buzz of the boutique's overhead lights. Melania took a step closer, and though her expression remained calm, her presence was overwhelming. "I didn't come here today to shop," Melania continued, her voice softening just enough to make Laura feel a pang of something like shame. "I came to show you that how someone looks, or what you assume about them, doesn't define their worth. This boutique may sell luxury, but respect is a far greater currency." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Laura felt her carefully built facade crumble under the weight of them. For the first time in years, she found herself questioning the principles she had so rigidly enforced. Then, to Laura's surprise, Melania turned to the cameras. "This isn't about me," she said, addressing them directly. "It's about how we treat each other. Every person who walks through those doors deserves to be seen, not judged." She paused, glancing back at Laura. "And every business has the power to uplift or to tear down. It's a choice." The room buzzed with whispers as the cameras captured every word. Laura stood motionless, her mind racing. This wasn't just about a single moment or a single mistake. It was about everything she had built her career around. And now, in front of an audience that seemed to grow larger by the second, she was being forced to reckon with it. Melania turned to leave, her entourage following behind her. But just before she reached the door, she paused and looked back at Laura. "I'll leave you with this," she said. "Elegance isn't just what you wear. It's how you treat others." And with that, she was gone. The cameras followed her out, leaving Laura standing alone in a boutique that suddenly felt much larger and emptier than before. For the next few hours, the store buzzed with activity. Customers whispered about the spectacle, some shaking their heads at Laura's actions, others speculating on how she would respond. Laura, however, barely registered the commotion. She retreated to her office, shutting the door behind her as she sank into her chair. Her mind replayed the scene over and over, each word Melania had spoken cutting deeper than the last. For years, Laura had prided herself on her ability to curate an exclusive experience, but now she wondered if that exclusivity had come at too great a cost. A knock at the door startled her. It was Emma, one of her junior staff members. "Laura," she said hesitantly, "there's someone here asking to speak with you. They said it's important." Laura sighed, exhausted and emotionally drained. "Who is it?" Emma hesitated. "They didn't give their name, but they handed me this." She extended a neatly folded piece of paper. Laura took it, her hands trembling slightly as she unfolded it. The words written inside made her breath catch in her throat. It was an invitation, addressed specifically to her. It read, "You're cordially invited to a private event tomorrow evening. Your presence is requested at the plaza, 7 p.m. sharp." Signed MT, Laura's heart raced. What could this mean? Was it another public reckoning, a chance for redemption, or something else entirely? She couldn't be sure, but one thing was clear, this wasn't over yet. Laura spent the rest of the day in a whirlwind of emotions. She reread the invitation countless times, her mind racing with questions. Why would Melania invite her to a private event after everything that had happened? Was it another lesson, or perhaps an opportunity to redeem herself? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but one thing was certain. She couldn't ignore it. The next evening, Laura arrived at the plaza dressed in her finest. She had chosen a sleek black dress and elegant heels, hoping to project confidence, even as nerves threatened to overwhelm her. The Grand Hotel was buzzing with activity, its opulent chandeliers and lavish decor exuding the kind of exclusivity Laura had always admired. A concierge greeted her at the entrance. "Ms. Laura, this way please," he said, guiding her to a private ballroom. The doors opened, revealing a room filled with elegantly dressed guests mingling over champagne. At the center of it all stood Melania Trump, poised and radiant in a stunning white gown. Laura hesitated at the threshold, unsure if she belonged. Before she could second-guess herself, Melania spotted her and smiled warmly. She approached with grace, her demeanor far different from the confrontation at the boutique. "Laura, I'm so glad you could make it," Melania said, her voice kind. Laura was taken aback by the warmth in her tone. "Thank you for inviting me," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "But I must admit, I'm not sure why I'm here." Melania gestured toward the room. "You'll see soon enough." Before Laura could ask more, Melania led her toward a podium at the front of the room. The chatter quieted as the First Lady took the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," Melania began. "Tonight is not just a celebration, it's an opportunity to reflect. Recently, I had an experience that reminded me how important it is to challenge our assumptions and look beyond the surface." Her gaze briefly met Laura's, and Laura felt her cheeks flush. Melania continued, "This isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about growth, redemption, and the power of kindness. And tonight, I'd like to honor someone who has taken the first step toward that journey." The crowd murmured in curiosity as Melania gestured for Laura to join her at the podium. Heart pounding, Laura stepped forward, unsure of what to expect. "Laura," Melania said, turning to face her, "you've built something special with your boutique. But as you've realized, true elegance isn't about exclusivity, it's about inclusion. I invited you here tonight not to shame you, but to celebrate the courage it takes to acknowledge our mistakes and strive to do better." Tears welled in Laura's eyes as Melania extended a hand. "I believe you have the ability to make elegance a place where everyone feels welcome. A place that embodies not just luxury, but humanity." The room erupted into applause as Laura shook Melania's hand, overwhelmed by the unexpected gesture. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. After the speech, the two women sat together at a quiet table. Melania shared stories of her own experiences with judgment and assumptions, and Laura listened intently, humbled by her honesty. "I want to change," Laura said earnestly, "but I'm not sure where to start." Melania smiled. "You've already started, Laura. The rest is about action. Open your doors, listen to your customers, and lead with compassion." In the weeks that followed, Laura took Melania's advice to heart. She revamped the boutique's policies, ensuring that every customer felt valued. She trained her staff to prioritize kindness and respect, and even hosted a charity fashion show that brought together people from all walks of life. To her surprise, the changes didn't alienate her high-end clientele. Instead, they embraced the new atmosphere. Elegance became a beacon of community and style, its reputation stronger than ever. One afternoon, as Laura stood by the boutique's front window, she spotted Melania walking by. The First Lady paused, catching Laura's eye through the glass. She smiled and gave a small wave before continuing on her way. Laura smiled back, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. She had misjudged Melania once, but her kindness and wisdom had transformed not just the boutique, but Laura herself. As the door swung open to welcome a new customer, Laura straightened her posture, ready to greet them not with judgment, but with genuine warmth. Elegance, after all, was no longer just about luxury. It was about the beauty of connection,